As I sit here, surrounded by the dusty relics of the past, a particular file from the Obscura Archive has caught my attention. It's a case that has haunted the town of Fayetteville, West Virginia, for generations, a case that began on a night that should have been filled with joy and celebration. Christmas Eve, 1945, was a time for the Sodder family to come together, to exchange gifts and share a meal, but it would ultimately become a night of unrelenting horror. The house, a small company-owned residence, was filled with the sound of laughter and music, the smell of freshly baked cookies and roasting meat wafting from the kitchen. But as the night wore on, a sense of unease began to settle over the family, a feeling that would soon turn to panic. A fire, its origin unknown, began to spread, engulfing the house in a matter of minutes. The family, once warm and safe inside, was now scrambling to escape the inferno, but in the chaos, 5 of the 9 Sodder children were nowhere to be found. The search began, a desperate and frantic effort to locate the missing children. But as the hours ticked by, hope began to dwindle. The fire had been intense, the heat so extreme that it had melted the aluminum siding, and the authorities feared the worst. And yet, as the ashes were sifted through, no bodies were found, leaving only questions and a haunting sense of uncertainty. As the investigation into the fire began, a sense of unease settled over the small town of Fayetteville, West Virginia. The authorities, led by State Police Corporal F.B. Sadler, combed through the charred remains of the Sodder home, searching for any clue that might explain the disappearance of the 5 children. The fire, which had raged with such intensity that it had melted the aluminum siding, seemed to have left behind only a faint trail of evidence. And yet, it was in the absence of certain signs that the first suspicions began to arise. The fire had not spread to the surrounding trees, nor had it ignited the nearby outbuildings, a fact that suggested it may have been contained or even deliberately set. As the days passed, the focus of the investigation began to shift from the fire itself to the family that had lived in the house. The Sodder family's past, once a seemingly ordinary one, was now subject to intense scrutiny. The parents, George and Jenny, were questioned at length, their stories and alibis dissected and re-examined. Theories about the cause of the blaze began to emerge, each one more troubling than the last. The lack of bodies, once a source of hope, now seemed a sinister absence, a void that threatened to swallow all rational explanation. And I, deep within the Obscura Archive, have watched as the threads of this mystery have become increasingly entangled, each new revelation weaving a darker, more complex tapestry. As the sun rose over the Sodder household, a sense of desperation began to settle in. The flames that had ravaged their home had been extinguished, but the true horror was only beginning to unfold. The community, fueled by a mix of fear and compassion, rallied to search for the missing children. I have witnessed similar scenes play out throughout history, the collective effort to find the lost, to bring solace to the grieving. In this case, the people of Fayetteville and beyond combed the surrounding woods, their footsteps quiet on the frost-covered ground. They scoured the creeks, the water icy and unforgiving, as if it too held secrets it was unwilling to yield. The trees, bare and skeletal, stood like sentinels, watching as the search parties methodically covered the landscape. The sound of rustling leaves and snapping twigs filled the air, a stark contrast to the silence that had fallen over the Sodder household. With each passing hour, the family's hopes of finding their children alive began to dwindle, like embers slowly losing their warmth. The reality of their situation was starting to sink in, the weight of it threatening to crush them. And I, from my vantage point within the Obscura Archive, could only watch as the darkness deepened, the shadows cast by the trees seeming to grow longer, as if they too were reaching out to snuff out the last vestiges of hope. As the days turned into weeks, the investigation into the Sodder children's disappearance continued to unfold, a complex tapestry of clues and theories. From my vantage point within the Obscura Archive, I observed the authorities painstakingly reconstructing the events of that fateful Christmas Eve, searching for any hint of what might have led to the vanishing of the 5 siblings. Theories began to emerge, like whispers in the darkness, each one a thread in the intricate narrative of the case. Some believed it was a kidnapping, that the children had been taken by someone who had been watching the family, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Others thought it might have been a tragic accident, a fire that had spread quickly, consuming everything in its path, leaving no trace of the children behind. But then there were those who suspected something more sinister, a malevolent force that had descended upon the Sodder household, leaving behind only ashes and silence. The possibilities swirled, a maelstrom of uncertainty, as the investigators worked tirelessly to separate fact from fiction, to shed light on the darkness that had descended upon the Sodder family. And I, from the depths of the archive, watched as the shadows continued to grow, the truth remaining elusive, hidden behind a veil of smoke and flames. As the shadows continued to grow, Maurice Sodder's determination only intensified, a beacon of hope in the darkness that had consumed her family. She spent every waking moment thinking of her children, her mind replaying the events of that fateful Christmas Eve, searching for any clue that might lead her to them. The smell of smoke and char still lingered in her nostrils, a constant reminder of what she had lost. And yet, she refused to give up, driven by a mother's unwavering love, a love that would not be extinguished by the passing of time. I recall the accounts of her tireless efforts, the countless letters she wrote to the authorities, the plea she made to the public for any information that might bring her children home. Her story is a testament to the unrelenting power of a mother's devotion, a flame that burned brightly, even in the face of overwhelming despair. The weeks turned into months, and the months into years, but Maurice Sodder's resolve never wavered, her heart remaining fixed on the hope of being reunited with her children. The world around her may have moved on, but for her, time stood still, frozen in the moment when her children vanished into the night. And so, she continued her search, a solitary figure, driven by a love that would not be silenced. As the years went by, the search for the Sodder children continued, fueled by their mother's unwavering dedication. She scoured the countryside, searched abandoned mines, and followed every lead, no matter how tenuous. The community, too, remained invested in the mystery, with many believing that the truth behind the disappearance lay hidden, waiting to be unearthed. But as the decades passed, the trail grew cold, and the family's hopes began to dwindle. The house on Fayette Street, once filled with the sound of laughter and children's voices, stood as a haunting reminder of what had been lost. In the end, it was not the truth that brought closure, but the passage of time. The mother's search, though unrelenting, was ultimately unsuccessful. The Sodder children's disappearance remains one of the most baffling unsolved mysteries in American history, a testament to the enduring power of a mother's love and the human spirit's capacity for perseverance. The case continues to captivate and haunt those who hear their story, a reminder that some secrets may never be fully uncovered. And so, I return the Sodder file to its place within the Obscura Archive, a poignant reminder of the mysteries that lie just beyond our understanding. If you've been following this case, I invite you to subscribe, for there are many more files waiting to be opened, each one a doorway to a new and intriguing enigma. The archive never closes.